My friends, welcome to another episode of Layers. After the Omnirod interview went live, which hopefully you all have seen, I sure hope so, we're now back with a new subject to talk about, and this time we're talking to Kim Olesen from Anubis Gate. We'll be talking about their latest record, and I'm very excited to dive into this. I've known Kim online for a few years, but we never spoke. This is the first time we actually spoke online over Zoom like this. So I hope you guys are just as excited as I am. Here we go. Let's dive into the interview. So, hello. I mean, this is the first time we actually talk. Like, I realized that we've had each other on socials for how long now? I think a few years?
Many years, I think.
Yeah, right? Like, obviously, I'm very much aware of Anubis Gate and what you guys have been doing because, like, I'm surrounded by the lovely Prog Power crew who all are massive fans of you guys ever since you played there. When was that? What year was that when you guys played there?
Let's see, we've played there 2 times, I think. We played there when we made the Perfect Forever album, and then we also played right after Jesper left the band, but he was still with us down there, so that must have been between the self-titled and Horizon.
Wow, so it's actually been a while, but it just kind of goes to show that for some reason you guys, well, not for some reason you guys are good, but it's like you're still being mentioned to people like, oh, we really want Anubis Gate back. You know, like you hear people say that, which is just, I feel that that's a really good compliment in regards to what you guys have left there. Now, for those of you who have no idea who you are or what Anubis Gate is, I would like to just start out and do a bit of an introduction. So, Kim, feel free, introduce yourself, introduce the band, tell us whatever you want to tell.
My name is Kim Olesen. And I'm the guitarist / keyboard player in Anubis Gate, and I think people categorize us as a progressive metal band. I wouldn't really say that myself, but I mean, it's not like we're not in the level of Dream Theater prog or Symphony X prog. I like music to be a little simpler than that, actually.
Well, to be fair, I think by now, with the interviews we've done and how prog has been evolving, I feel that there's a lot of progressive metal bands that don't play a million notes per second, so to speak. So
yeah.
in that sense, you guys are good, I think.
I mean, we have bands like Catatonia. I think they're a fantastic band. One of probably my favorite new, since they've been around for ages, but newish prog metal band. I mean, they've got something special, and we're quite influenced by them. I don't know if it's obvious.
Honestly, yeah. It's funny to just say that because I can hear it a little bit, but also a lot of other influences. Like, it's not like so obvious that people will be like, oh, it's a Catatonia ripoff. Not by far, not at all. You know, like, I don't think so.
I think it's most obvious in tracks like Destined to Remember, you know, that groove in the chorus and the way Catatonia have a thing where they can kind of play in 4 and it still seems like an odd beat, which I like very much. I like, you know, when you sometimes pulling the rock away from underneath people's feet and they go, oh.
That's when it gets interesting. Yeah. That's where the real magic happens, basically, yeah. What else can you say about the sound of Anubis Gate, if you had to analyze it for an outsider who never heard it before?
I think most people would categorize us as a modern prog metal band, but I must confess that apart from Catatonia, I don't particularly listen to modern prog at all, actually. So my influences are more like 70s prog, and for me, we just heavy metal that up.
Yeah, but that's completely valid. There's a lot of bands who do that and who get good results. Actually, I feel that if you want to go for a description, in this case as an outsider who likes your music, it's like I would feel that is actually a way more accurate way of describing you, because I can hear that. I can hear that you guys like your 70s prog and 70s hard rock, but yeah, it's just played a lot louder and a lot more modern and a lot more now.
And I would put in a good dose of 80s thrash metal actually in there. I mean, The New Order is such an amazing album, you know, some Megadeth, stuff like that, you know, it creeps in and mix that with 70s prog, and I think you've got something like Anubis Gate, and kind of, you know, very influenced by 80s synth pop bands, you know, Duran Duran and Depeche Mode and stuff like that. There's also a lot of that in there.
Actually, yeah, I hear that as well. Like, for example, I'm a huge Trevor Horn fan in terms of production. Yeah. I can definitely hear that there's like these big synthesizers and that kind of stuff. You guys have that as well. But I also hear the thrash metal riffing, definitely. That's definitely in your sound as well. In terms of your own input, are you the one that writes most of the music yourself, or is it more like a group process, or how do I have to perceive that? Because it's called a band, but then the mechanics could be so many different things, obviously.
Yeah, they can, especially nowadays when, we've never ever written a song in a rehearsal room. Well, maybe a couple of songs for the first album was kind of written many years before in a pre-Anubis Gate band that I had with Jesper and our first drummer, Morten Sørensen. I mean, we all contribute. Maybe, Henrik obviously writes almost all the lyrics and almost all the vocal lines. I have a couple of bits in there too. Mm-hmm. But we're kind of a Dropbox band. You know, everyone puts their stuff into a Dropbox, and really what we hear is kind of mashups. You know, I can take the vocals from one song and put it over a riff that Michael has made. I sometimes do that. It doesn't matter if you ugly pitch shift it, you know, it's just when we make
as long as it works for the writing, right? As long as you know what's being meant, really.
Yeah. And I've done that, taking vocals from one song and put them on Michael's songs, and then I'll go write something for that, and it becomes a track, you know. I would say that's the most normal way for us to do it. But then again, you know, the first 2 tracks on the new album were very much, you know, the first track was very much Michael's and the next track was very much Henrik's.
Obviously, we're gonna dive into those songs in a bit, and we're gonna do all the details around that. But I don't know, I just really want to point out Dropbox band. I think that's a really good term.
We also live, if we were to meet up, it would mean that we're all, if not old, then kind of old people, you know. We're 3 people that are over 50, and we have I have 4 grandchildren. Yeah, it's lovely, but that also means that as you get older, you prioritize less to meet up for rehearsals. You prioritize your family more, and we're all busy people. I have a full-time job as a guitar teacher, actually. Mm-hmm. And then I go play weddings and parties in the weekend.
But there's no shame in that. I feel that in the modern musical landscape, it's like we live in a day and age. This is something I hear from a lot of. Obviously, I interview people that are in the prog sphere, and I think everyone kind of has that same situation, that you're just passionate about what you do and you have something to say and you want to make it, but you're just aware, like, okay, this is not going to pay my mortgage, so I need to create stability so I can actually create this crazy music I have in my head, you know. And I don't think that's sure I think everyone has that teenage rock and roll star dream of wanting to make money with it, but at the same time, I actually think it might be a blessing, because then your money is not dependent on if you write a hit song or not. You know what I mean? Like, you can actually just write really cool stuff that you like.
I totally agree, and also Anubis Gate started when I was 30 years old. So that means I was actually already too old to become any kind of star. And you know, there's no chance of that when you're 50. Actually, we started out by turning down all kinds of crazy tour offers and just said, no, we'll play a show now and then and just make albums. And that was the plan right from the start.
To be fair, I feel that there's a weird kind of... Oh, weird is the wrong word. I think that it's a good kind of realism in the sense that normally you hear bands that like, we want everything, but actually being able to say, no, this is what we want, and we're comfortable with that. I think that's a real strength. I think that's a really positive thing to be able to say, because then you're actually doing exactly what you want in the way you enjoy it, which is worth a lot, honestly.
It gives a lot of freedom, and we were kind of lucky to get the last few years of the CD era when there really were gatekeepers called record companies. You know, today there are so many bands that I don't think we would have any chance today for even making any kind of name, but we were lucky to just get a couple of albums in when CDs were still the main thing and streaming wasn't quite invented yet. I think that's what really has sustained our careers as players of crazy music.
I think I can imagine it was a good kickstart, though I think you're not giving yourself enough credit, because I do think the music, like, this is not me fanboying, but I tend to interview people whose music I like, because otherwise there's no point. And I do feel that what you guys are doing would be strong enough on its own merit even in this day and age. But I do see that it could be a nice little kickstart to be there in the late 90s/early 2000s and getting that little boost.
Yes.
And when the music industry still was a thing, you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. And even though they went bankrupt, our first record company actually did really promote the albums, and so have our next record companies. But things have changed. There is no such thing as money in the business now, and that's not me complaining, because many years ago I took a look at myself and wondered, for whose sake am I doing this?
That's a good question.
And it's the same question. I was talking about it just yesterday when I was playing a gig, yet another cover gig. We were talking about that, and there was one of the guys that I was playing with who was kind of a bit sad that he never had a chance to, make it. And I said to him, but why are you playing music? I mean, I'm playing music. I'm playing here tonight because I do it for my own sake. It's great that I can earn some money, but I enjoy playing Proud Mary. I play it differently. I try to play it a bit differently every time I play it, and I play in so many different cover bands that I play differently because there are different people playing differently in the band. So and it's the same with Anubis Gate. I do it because I would go a little bit insane if I didn't do it. So it's for my own sake, and if people like it, that's a great bonus.
I think that's a really good introduction and description. Here we go. I mean, to be fair, I feel that's the right motivation, and it's the motivation I hear from all the musicians I talk to here on this program, is like there's just an overarching sense of, I gotta do this because I want to do this. I have something to say and I want to get it out there, and that's why I do it.
I mean, even Paul McCartney or Ringo Starr, they could have retired years ago. They're some of the richest
and they're still doing it.
In the world. And they still tour because they're musicians. What else should they do? Take up gardening or
no, exactly.
become plumber or so?
In the case of Paul McCartney, he does have a really nice farm, and he probably did do some gardening. But still, he's also a musician.
Yeah.
There you go.
I mean, he was a musician many years before he got famous.
Okay, so we're gonna head into the record, and the first song on the album, Emergence, is the one I have on the list here. What I tend to do is just ask, like, what are the songs about, and by doing so, we can look at what the structure of the record is. But I feel that the first question I should ask is, like, regarding Interference, like, was there an overarching theme, or was it a collection of songs that you guys just had that ended up being a record? Like, what was the thought behind that?
It started live as mostly just independent songs, and then when we were kind of 2/3 through it, our founder member Jesper committed suicide, and he wasn't in the band as he left the band 10 years ago, more I think. But we were still good friends, and that kind of some of the lyrics were changed, and Henrik was very close to him and visited him often. So Henrik, I think, particularly needed to write about it. So some of the songs became about that.
Processing those emotions, basically.
Yeah. So no, it's called Interference for a reason, actually, the album, because just when we started out writing it, COVID happened.
There's your interference. Right.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, actually, that gave me some spare time to do some more work on the album, but we had all kinds of roadblocks hitting that album. I mean, it was kind of crazy. There were really times when I thought, we're never gonna make this album. But sometimes that works for your art when you have a little bit of opposition. I don't recall it as being particularly difficult to write, but there was the roadblocks were in the sphere around us.
It's funny that you say that, because it's a quote that there's like this Dutch quote that says, like, no one dies of love but of all the things around it. It's a bit like that. It's like writing the album itself wasn't the hard part, it was just life. Everything happening at the same time.
For me personally, my father got seriously ill with Parkinson's and dementia, and that kind of took one day out of the week for 4 or 5 years for me, and those were the days where I usually would sit down and work on Anubis Gate things.
But that's what you do. You care for your dad, so you're there.
Yeah.
The end.
So I mean, and all kinds of stuff like that happened in that period. But then again, actually, we made 2 albums in that period, because we made a covers album before Interference, and they were actually simultaneous projects. It was just that the covers album happened to be finished before the Interference album.
So in a way, it's like you guys were able to at least take the setbacks and get something good, or at least something productive out of it. I can imagine it works that way, because for a lot of bands it worked that way around that time. Let's just say it as it is. A lot of people suffered through the COVID times, and in your case with your father, I can imagine that's just something you do, but it does change your life. It's like,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, it does, and also, you know, even getting the album made, you know, getting the drums recorded, you know, because everyone wanted to make an album during those days, so that meant that Jacob Hansen, he was just so fully booked that it was kind of impossible to get in and get some studio time at his place, and that's not his fault. He was just so fully booked.
I mean, for him, that's good. Financially, that's good. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I want him to be as successful as. I mean, he's our friend, and he was in the band.
Exactly.
I want him to be the most known producer in all the world and earn millions of euros.
But at the same time, if you want to record an album and you get the message like, hey, I might have like 1 hour at 3 o'clock at night for you guys. Is that workable? You know, that might
but we're not huge customers. You know, he is always friendly to us, but we got to fit in where he has spare time.
That makes sense.
I really understand that, because when, you know, if Volbeat comes and wants, you know, tomorrow we want to come in the studio and book it solid for 2 months, he's not gonna say no.
No, of course not. No,
of course not.
No, but everyone could understand that. I mean, that makes complete sense. But so we get a bit of an idea of what the idea behind Interference was in terms of, you know, working through the hurdles. Let's just call them hurdles, because you did manage them. So there we go. And then we head into, like I said, first track, Emergence. So I feel that there's actually, I don't know if there's a deeper meaning behind the song, which you might be able to tell me, but I feel that the emergence might actually just be the fact that the album emerged at all, considering the situation, right?
I mean, Henrik's lyrics, they're also kind of multifaceted, but for me it has that meaning. It's also kind of jubilant expression. I mean, we're here. Here is this album. We spring it at you. It's emerging. So in that sense, Henrik wrote the lyrics and the vocal melodies, and that was almost 99% Michael's track. Michael really has he's very good at album openers. There's something about his writing. Every time he has, I think this is the album opener, I will just, yeah, of course it is. This is the album opener.
Some people can just magically do that. They can just pull them out of their ass like that. It's But that is cool, though. I can get that. But it's also just a magical moment, the moment you finish a song and everyone just knows, like, yeah, this is the album opener. You know, there's something really cool about that. Then we're heading into the second track, obviously a title that is known to anyone who speaks a little bit of English. Ignorance is bliss. What is the song about? Like, what is the subject matter here?
I think it's about how sometimes not wanting to know what other people goes through can be a kind of a relief in dealing with them. And sometimes you never know what people are going through emotionally and personally. This song was written before Jesper killed himself, and I haven't asked Henrik directly about this, but I still think it's about Jesper. About Henrik hoping that somehow Jesper would find the strength to conquer his inner demons. I mean, it's kind of universal message, but I think at the roots it's one of the songs that's about Jesper.
Well, okay. Yeah, I can get that. Also, ignorance is bliss is an interesting concept in general because, and I don't want to talk over, in this case, Jesper and what happened there, don't get me wrong, but the way I interpreted the song, I also heard a few parts about it that made me think about how, and this is very personal that I'm going to throw in here, but this is something I hear from more and more people. I noticed that there's, for example, more and more people who are like, yeah, I'll read the news headlines, but I'd rather not watch the news every day anymore because I cannot help it and it makes me incredibly sad. You know, like, yes. I cannot change the world as much as I would love to, and therefore protect myself a little bit by maybe taking in a bit less than I used to, which...
I raise my hand here, and I'm kind of one of those, and I was a sucker for really following the news when I was younger, and I'm kind of resigning a bit also. The world is a powder keg right now, and there's nothing. I mean, if someone decides to press the button tomorrow, the only thing I can do about it until then is to be as happy as possible until that happens.
Yeah, but that's kind of the point. It's like, I feel that there's always like this struggle between wanting to be on top and wanting to change the world and wanting to make the world better, which I think is kind of the moral obligation of people, like try to make the world a bit better than how you found it. But at the same time, it's like there's so much happening that you as one individual have no influence over. So it's like, okay, I'll just sit here and be overwhelmed then, you know, like, but that's not going to help anyone either, you know?
I agree 100%. I'm not being happier. I'm not interacting better with people. Yeah, it's just, it's not working for me right now, following the news too much. Though I have a very strong political views about not being extremist, either to the left or to the right. I'm all for people being moderate.
Yeah, that's fair. It's always interesting to figure out that balance, I think, between how much you want to take in and how much awareness that you want to have and how much you actually need to be functioning as an adult. I feel that that's just something a lot of people are working their way through. Then we're heading into the third track on the record, Number Stations, and I was wondering because that was one that puzzled me a little bit in terms of the title and the subject matter, so help. What is that about?
Back in the Cold War, there were these radio stations that were right on the edge of the AM band, which transmitted what seems like random numbers, and you can hear some of them in the song. And it's been theorized that they are actually very slow codes, used to transmit stuff under the Cold War. Actually, the first sound you hear, no, not the first sound you hear, there is a kind of sound, which is on one of the number stations that are still being transmitted. And that comes from Russia. And the theory behind this is very scary, is that if that one stops, the nukes launch. That's kind of a dead man's hand, but it's a kind of a Cold War fantasy. So we call it that, the song, and it kind of, we're into it's being said that territory. But it's being said that several diplomatic crises have been solved in the last minutes with the help of those number stations. So that's why the song ends at 1 before the nukes launch.
Right, that checks out, because for me it was like, I partially got that because what it reminded me of, and this is a good reference by the way, because I remember the Porcupine Tree song Even Less, which also had like that lady going 3, 2, 0, 5, 5, 0, 6, like that kind of thing, and I knew that was also a part of those kind of stations, but then now I get what you guys were referencing when I'm hearing this. I'm like, okay, that checks out.
And the fun thing is, I haven't heard a single Porcupine Tree record in my life. So I wasn't aware, and then when the album came out, there were a couple of people telling me, oh, you ripped off the idea of that song. I was like, what? I didn't know.
I'm not saying rip it. I just want to be on record here. It's filmed that I'm not saying you ripped it off, but now that you're mentioning it,
I didn't even take it like that. Yeah. I mean,
but to be fair, Stephen Wilson is also from the same generation as you, and I can imagine that with the generation being raised on radio and that kind of stuff, when you would come by that when you're younger, it's like a whoa, it's like a magical experience almost. Like, what is this weird abracadabra happening here? So I can get that.
I mean, it's funny because, there are quite a few YouTube channels dedicated only to number stations, and they have kind of names like the Lancaster Woodpecker and the Russian Singer, and it's very funny. It's quite a rabbit hole to fall into.
So I was always wanted to say, because this is almost the end of episode 1, but I feel that we can send our viewers, we can send you guys out, like, dive into that rabbit hole if you don't want to sleep tonight. If you want to go into something really fucked up, there you go. Good luck with it. Kim, thank you so much for being a part of this. This is the end of the first episode, and everyone here watching this, obviously leave a comment in the comment section. Do whatever you do on whatever social media platform you're watching this on. Thank you for watching, and we hope to see you again in 2 weeks when we dive into the rest of Anubis Gate's Interference record. See you guys in 2 weeks.